morning. It's day number 8 of our Lent Devotional video series that we are doing each day, at least Monday through Friday, leading up to Easter. And I'm so excited to be with you. My name is Pastor Mark, and today we are diving into the topic of contentment. You know, we've been looking at things that we should surrender. And I think one thing that we should remember is that anxiety cannot exist in the same place as contentment. And so if you are, feeling content in your circumstances, then there's a good chance that you're not dealing with anxiety. The only thing is that's different between the way the Bible talks about contentment and the way that we sometimes see contentment is that we often look at contentment as this, this passive kicking back, like, I'm sitting on my couch right now before I head into the office. But, if I wanted to be content later on this afternoon, good chance I'm coming back, sitting on this couch, watching some baseball. If it's a really good Friday afternoon, maybe I'm grabbing a bowl of ice cream and I'm just being content, just relaxing. Well, the Bible doesn't really speak of contentment as something that is passive like that. Instead, the Bible speaks of contentment as a posture, as a spiritual perspective of how we should live our lives. And so today I just want us to dive into that. It actually comes from Philippians chapter 4 verses 11. So let me just pull this verse up on the screen so we can cover it. It says here from Paul, "Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance, and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me." See, I love this verse because it's talking about contentment being a posture. But notice here, twice in these 3 verses, it says, "For I have learned." See, even the Apostle Paul, he didn't know how to be content just initially. He had to learn how to be content. He needed to learn how to have this spiritual posture of being content in the Lord when it came to different circumstances that he was dealing with. And Paul, of all people that we look at in the Bible, he dealt with a lot of tough circumstances. In fact, what he dealt with being in prison, he dealt with shipwrecks, he dealt with being flogged, he eventually dealt with being beheaded. And so he dealt with all these really tough circumstances. And here in the letter of Philippians, he's telling others, "I've learned how to be content." And so I just wanted to, before we wrap this up and encourage us to learn how to be content, I just want to highlight some things that contentment helps us with. So the first thing is this. When we learn to be content, contentment guards our heart. Contentment guards our heart. In fact, this is what it says in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. It says, keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, "I will never leave you or forsake you." Now, there, in the letter of Hebrews, it's talking about, keeping your life free from the love of money. But notice how he connects this idea of contentment with just guarding your heart and learning to what? Trust in the Lord, that he's going to be with you always, that you're going to lean into him instead of leaning into the things of this world like money and possessions, other things that we learn to be content with, like ice cream even. But anyway, it's one of those things where, it guards our heart. When we are, learning how to have the spiritual posture of contentment, it guards our heart. The second thing that contentment does is this. It builds up trust. And I really should have actually said it builds up trust in the Lord. And where we learn this from is from Matthew chapter 6, verse 25. And I could have actually put this whole section there in Matthew chapter 6. We know it well. But remember when Jesus was giving the Sermon on the Mount, he said, "Therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body what you will put on. Is not life more than food, the body more than clothing? And so even Jesus is talking about being content in God, learning to place your trust in the Lord for all things. And he goes on and talks about the birds of the air, and they neither sow nor they reap, but yet the Heavenly Father cares for them. And I'm just looking out the window right now and seeing all the robins show up. Hopefully that's a good sign for spring coming. But they learn how to trust in the Lord. And so if God cares about the birds of the air, he cares so much more about us. And so what does contentment, this spiritual posture of contentment, teach us? Yeah, it helps us learn how to trust in God. And then the last thing, I just want to highlight what contentment does. And let me pull up the slide here. Contentment helps us with our perspective. Really helps us have a perspective built on what? Hope. And really, how God's grace is sufficient. His power is made perfect. This is what Paul said. In fact, let me bring up the verse here, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9 and 10. He said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then I am content. There's a key word, content, with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. You see, what Paul is saying there is he's learned to be content in his weaknesses, when people insult him, when he goes through hardships, when he deals with persecutions, calamities, and he could have probably given a list of 10 other things. But see, the contentment was the spiritual posture that helped him be able to get through all those things. Because why? He leaned on God's power. He leaned on God's strength. And so what does contentment do? It helps us with our perspective in living our life. So that is one thing I hope that we learn to live more in, this, not this contentment of just kicking back, but this contentment of a spiritual posture of trusting the Lord, leaning into him. See, we need to let go of our anxiety. We've been talking about a lot of things that we should lay down. And I mentioned this, I think towards the beginning of the video, where anxiety and contentment, they can't exist in the same soil. So we need to learn to let go of anxiety. We need to let go of our concerns, our struggles, and instead learn how to be content. Not as something that is passive, but something that is active, a spiritual posture of looking towards the Lord in all things. And that is my prayer for you today as you go about your day, as you go about your weekend, as you deal with your struggles. I know each one of us probably has something that we're struggling with today. Whether it's illness or finances or relationship issues or maybe work struggles. There's a lot of things that all of us deal with. But may you find your posture today in being content. May you seek that out. May you ask the Lord to help you be content in your circumstances. And learn how God's grace is sufficient for you today. His power is made in your weakness. That's what Jesus came to do for each one of us on Easter. That's what we celebrate. And I just pray that is an encouraging word for you today. So God bless, and I look forward to seeing you actually not tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday, so I'll see you on Monday with the next video installment of this Lent Devotional series that we're going through leading us up to Easter. So God bless. I'll see you again.